All right, here we are, the year-end spectacular of Whitecap, the Canadian Sailing Podcast. So normally I go into these and I'm like, "Hey, welcome to Whitecap. It's today we're talking to." But today I'm gonna just kind of chill a little bit and talk about the podcast a bit, like Mark Maron style. We are counting down the top 7 stories of Canadian sailing in the year of 2022. And I do have a guest who I'm going to introduce in a minute. But I just first wanted to thank people that are listening to the podcast. I've met people that I didn't know listened to the podcast. Like, hey, you had Sarah Douglas on. I've had a lot of master sailors been really into it, so that's been really cool that people like it. I had another podcast before that I probably had 70 downloads, and we've had 1,600 downloads for this show. It's not bad. And so the story was that when during the lockdown, 2 friends of mine said that they thought it would be cool to have a sailing podcast, and those 2 guys just kind of, that was their idea. Hey, we should have a sailing podcast. And then I sort of took it from there. And then I was just going to do it, like, just whoever I knew. And I talked to my first guest. And I recorded a podcast. And I put up a thing on Instagram. And I said, what would be a good name for a podcast? And this guy from Sail Canada, whose name is Patrick Godbout, saw it and he said, "Are you making a podcast? That's great. I want to help you. At Sail Canada, we really want to have a podcast." So I was like, oh, cool. And I sent him the first podcast that I recorded, which was with my current guest, whose name is Chris Waters, who is the only person I know who knows more about the sport in Canada than me. He's the founder and head coach of East Coast Ilka, former head coach of the BVI national team, a pro sailor, a member of Canada's Star Sailors League team, and most recently named the 2022 Nova Scotia Sailing Coach of the Year. Chris, welcome on the podcast.
Great. Hey, thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here.
So we recorded a podcast, just me and you, and then after that, I recorded another podcast with you, which was about the Sails GP Chicago, which was just like kind of a special episode sidebar. And now I have you on, and this is really happening this time, Chris. This is coming out in December 27th.
I remember you had said, making a podcast, start with me, and you went through, but I mean, from the lineup that you've had on the show, it was definitely an uphill curve for the sport.
Yeah,
so
you can understand that I had to bump you for Phil Robertson, Sarah Douglas, and then Tom Ramshaw.
You got to come out of the gates hot there.
I couldn't believe it, and I was interviewing Phil, and I was like, I wonder if he's going to call me mate, and the first thing he said, "Hey, mate, good to meet you." And I was like, "Wow, he called me mate." So that was the story. So how has 2022 been for you, Chris Waters?
It's been unbelievable. I've had, probably one of the best years I've ever had in sailing, whether it's like coaching, racing, the amount of information that I've learned and gotten better, right through to my home life with the family. I have a 5-month-old baby at home who's a sweet angel.
Mazel tov. Great.
And it's been wild, but I wouldn't have wanted it any other way.
What would this sailing highlight? Of course, having kids, as I have 2 who are now both great sailors. That's always your highlights of your life. It's like kind of hard to explain. But then if you took that out of the equation, what's the sailing kind of highlight of the year?
Yeah, it's good. There was actually a few. I happened to get lucky and get on a couple really great race boats. And I think the most special one was that we won national championship in the Melges 24. And I never
Woo!
won a national championship before. I'd come close a few times in different classes. So to have that title, it feels it's great. It's a Canadian title, and the team that we did it with was just really fun.
Yeah, tell me about the team and the event.
So it was in Toronto, would have been in September, and it was the third regatta that I had done with the Team Zingar from Melges 24. He came and we got it together for Toronto, and we had to shed like 15 pounds in a day and a half. So, we did that and we made weight by a few pounds, and it was a really great run event, and to be able to sail in Toronto, which a lot of people give a hard time. I love sailing in Toronto, so it was great racing. We had everything from 30 plus knots coming straight
Wow.
from Toronto Island. It was gnarly downwind, and to that light air, kind of tricky Humber Bay water movement, and we did great. I think we won every race except for a couple. It was really fun, and that's been
Oh,
a
that's awesome.
pleasure.
That's awesome. So every time I want to talk about myself on the podcast, I always feel like I'm just wasting time. But now it's the year-end spectacular. I'm going to say a couple of things from my season. The big thing that I was trying to get ready for was the Masters ACCs in Shelburne, which I have to shout out Henry Pedro and the whole yacht club. It's an incredible regatta, and everybody that went there said that it was a haul to get out there, but we had there was a guy from Australia, there were guys from the States, from Annapolis that far down, guys from Toronto, Ottawa came in, and it was just a great event, and that was my peak event that I was trying to get together, get ready for, and bought a new boat. Had a fitness program with Bruno Fontes. Everyone shout out Bruno. He's amazing. And I had a fitness program I was doing with him. And, process over performance goals. I wanted to place top 10 and I placed ninth. So I was very happy with that event.
When you send me photos of your hiking bench and being like, "Is this good?" Yeah, that hiking bench, any hiking bench is good. So the fact that you have one and you're working on it is probably the very sets you apart. It was good. You did everything well. So congrats on it.
Oh, thank you. Everyone talks about sailing, what weight they should be for different rigs, especially in the laser class, and I'm sure you come across this as a coach all the time. But Andrew Lewis, who we'll talk about later, who's I know is a friend of yours and is basically the Ilka 7 coach for Canada, he did this video where he talked about, don't worry about weight, man. It's about hiking. When you can hike for 4 minutes in perfect form, then we can talk about what boat you should be sailing.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Right?
Yeah.
And I realized that, I was going to be all impressed because I did spend 22 hours on my hiking bench this year.
Wow. You probably in the top one. You could be the top hiking bench user. Maybe some of the national team guys would have a edge on you there. I know Ryan Anderson uses it a ton. So, but you would be in that. I think I'm going to give you top 10 in the hiking bench.
Yes.
In Canada. There you go. I know we actually set one up at a boat show in Toronto and had a competition, and the guy who won it was like a 60-year-old master sailor, and he just endured pain for like 6 or 7 minutes. It was a long time. So it just made me think of that.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
All right, so what do you say? We should count down the top 7 sailing stories for 2022?
Yeah, let's jump into it. There's some good ones in here.
Okay, so the number 7 story is the first annual Whitecap Cup for diversity, equity, and inclusion, given by this podcast to 2 incredible programs. So the first goes to Sask Sailing and the head of their program, Angela Cromarty, for the work that she and they did with the Cree Nation in northern Saskatchewan, Lake of Montreal, which is a reservation up there. It's like 400 kilometers north of Regina. And they went up there with a mobile sailing school, a few 420s and a couple of Optis, I think. And they taught for a week, and it was very challenging for everybody involved, but they got it done. And the kids were, she said that the kids and also the people in the town, they were like, we've never seen a sailboat on this lake ever. And it's this big, beautiful lake, So that got to me. I was like, wow, like that there's places like that and that we can access them. Really made me think that I had to shine a light on that. So Angela will be on the podcast sometime to talk more specifically about it. And the second one, I'll pass it off to you. The second winner of that is the Broader Reach program, which is run by Anthony Rossborough at the Armdale Yacht Club, where they partner with Boys and Girls Club and some other organizations, and we're able to give like 30 or 40 kids 10 weeks of sailing lessons for free.
Yeah, and they get a lot of adults too, and like whole families come. And the beauty of Armdale's program is they got like 5 or 6 Solings, which make great platforms to throw 3 or 4 people into. And I was fortunate enough to volunteer for one of the evenings. It was the last one. And kind of in the debrief, some of the participants kind of gave their stories, and there were Syrian refugees and all saying how appreciative they were to be able to have the opportunity and sail. And a lot of them come back and continue to do the program now because they have a junior program. So, it was really a great experience. And yeah, they get so many people that come through the program, and it's only grown over the last 3-4 years, especially since they had a pretty big gap in their program, and now they're looking into getting somebody more full time, and they have the whole junior club building they got Learn to Sail building to work on the boats through the winter, and they got 3 or 4 ribs now, so the program is just on the way up. And Anthony and another guy, Nick, has done an amazing job there, and they bring in great instructors, and really stoked to be part of that program.
It's so cool. Also, that idea of Solings, like essentially a dead class. It's certainly not any places that I shouldn't say it's a dead class, but as a platform for former Olympic class. Everyone, if you don't know, like best sailors in the world in the 80s were sailing those boats. Like Dennis Conner, Joachim Scholem, and like everybody, including our own Andreas Josenhans, Sandy McMillan, and Glenn Dexter, who won the 1980 Worlds or 79 Worlds.
Yeah, they're world somewhere in there. When that boat was the hardest boat to compete in. Yeah.
So as a platform for teaching, like it's got a high freeboard, they're very like chill, I think, in not too much wind. And just great to kind of break the mold from the Opti 420, laser pathway.
Yeah, and they show that you can pick a boat up for a few grand, put a bit of elbow grease into it, and then all of a sudden you can expand your program for another 4 people. And they're selling out these spots in like May. So now that they're starting to expand, they're able to see that it's a huge market. And Halifax is getting so big and it's growing so exponentially that there's a new sailing clubs popping up. So it's really on the local clubs to facilitate this. And
right. Well, now that they've got the Whitecap Cup, I'm sure that all the programs, and I challenge all the other provincial sailing associations and community sailing centers, and even the Royal Yacht Clubs, to get out there and open sailing up to as many people as we can, because it's like you say, it's possible. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be a millionaire to learn to sail and race and all that stuff.
No. And is there an actual cup? Do we have?
Well, my wife is a really great Nadia Janevsky. She's a great artist in general. She's also does ceramics, and she's apparently going to make us a ceramic cup.
Cool.
And I don't know, we'll mark on it or something. Okay, so that was 7. The number 6 story for 2022 is the inductees of the Canadian Sailing Hall of Fame for 2022. Now, I have the list here. The SORC 1968 SORC boat called Red Jacket was a big winner in
Oh, Red
2020.
Jacket,
What do you know
yes.
about Red Jacket?
I know it's a legend at RCYC, and I think actually Billy Gooderham's from CLGB's dad was part of Red Jacket for a long time, and like all the guys, everyone talks about Red Jacket, and it was always on like slip one right by the sailing office, and the boat would like go through. I think it's been through a few cycles of owners, and I think the last time I saw it was up in Kingston Yacht Club. So yeah, the Red Jacket is a legend, lake boat.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Red Jacket, the connections there were Gordon Fisher, who I guess was the skipper, also Canada Cup winner. Peter Connolly, who won the Canada Cup as well. George Cassian, one half of C&C, the other being George Cuthbertson.
Okay. Yeah.
Who's also, these are all the people that got in. Eric Bruckman, who was the builder of Red Jacket and a founding member of C&C Yachts and manager of C&C Custom Division. And then the next one is George Hinterholer, who was the designer and builder of the Shark.
Oh,
which
this
is,
is like these are all named like RCYC long time.
Oh yeah. So
founder.
yeah, the Shark is an incredible boat that basically only kind of lives in the lakes, in the Great Lakes, kind of, and mostly in Kingston. It's such a cool one design class. Ian Morch, who established Belleville Marine and was a founding member of C&C Yachts as well. So the ones that I do know well, so John Millen and Frank McLaughlin, who won the bronze in '88 in Flying Dutchman, and then Karen and Gail Johnson, who won the '85 Women's 470 Worlds and went to the '88. I think '88 was the first year that they had a women's class in the 470, and Karen and Gail Johnson went to Korea for that.
That makes sense.
The boat right behind them, who was the crew that I had on the podcast, Judy Lugar and Morag McLean, who won the 1986 470 Worlds, but did not make it to Korea. They were heroes of mine growing up as a Laser 2 sailor in the mid 80s. On the podcast, they basically were in a dogfight with Karen and Gail Johnson, and the last race of their qualifiers was in Kingston, and they canceled it with them in the lead. They abandoned the race because they considered it too windy.
No.
Yeah. And they were still sore about it, man.
Oh man, would you be though?
Yeah. So they were great, though. I really loved having them on the podcast, and like I say, and you must know Judy. Like, she's still very active.
She is. I've crossed paths with her a few times since moving back to Halifax.
And now everything got crazy because of COVID. 2020 became 2021 and 2022. So I want to talk about one of the inductees of the 2021 class. And that would be Lynn Waters.
Oh, of course, legend.
Your grandfather. His story was, vast, right? But he was he essentially wrote parts of the rule book.
Right.
Was very active in Royal St. Lawrence and just on the world stage in terms of judges and stuff. He was
him and Ed Botterill. They were top 5 at the Worlds leading up to the Olympics, I think.
And Dragons, right?
Dragons, and
yeah.
They were the favorites going into the Olympics, and Ed Botterill got violently ill to the point where they had to bring a bucket out for him during the first few days of racing to just empty himself. And I think they finished 4th or 5th at that games, and that was probably one of his more disappointing events. But when the rule book got switched to whatever. I think it was less than 30 rules kind of just written out to the part 1, part 2, part 3, all that. That was he was one of the few people that put that all together. So
right.
His knowledge of the rules was very vast. And I think when they went to different rules in the 2000s or 90s, I remember him, grumping about how they should make these changes and blah, blah, blah. But we bumped into Dennis Conner one time and they're just chatting it up, and did all the America's Cup stuff as far as a judge.
Right.
Yeah, big help through my
Wow,
years.
that's really cool. It's great. I had no idea we had that. You had that connection. So moving on to the number 5 story for Canadian sailing is the Canada Ocean Racing Program to attempt to do the 2028 Vendée Globe. The CEO, president, and skipper is Scott Scheuer, who I had on the podcast. Really great guy. Interesting story. And he got Alex Thompson, who is a legend in solo offshore racing, as a mentor. All that story is on episode 9, if anyone wants to go back and listen to it. So you, Chris, know some of the crew that are working for him. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so Morgan Watson and his girlfriend Meg Riley used to run the Pogo Ocean Racers, and it was a ocean racing boat where you could join as a crew in the paid crew, or you pay them, and they would they did all the major Caribbean regattas, and I think they did a lot of transatlantic stuff, and they sort of gathered a group of people that would come and go, and did a lot of good races with tons of sailors with experience to some with very little. So I know another friend on the boat, Daniel Gaw, and he's an incredible bowman, who's been doing big boat stuff for a long time, and a fellow Nova Scotian as well.
Okay.
So he's been involved with that, and it's kind of given these Canadian younger guys, younger as in like 40, but like a little younger, another pathway to go through, which is Canada is so small, so right away these guys are fully involved in that, and that's awesome. Yeah. Looks like they're doing it right.
When I saw that there was going to be a solo or like an offshore team, I was like, well, it's got to be Richard Clark, right?
Well, maybe he'll be involved at some point.
Well, yeah, Scott said that he was going to be doing some double-handed racing with Richard. So
awesome.
So that's just exciting. Like offshore racing in Canada is not something that that it's not a big time sport. And obviously the Vendée is huge in France and other places, and so it's great that we're going to have a boat in that realm. So now moving on to story number 4, the foiling scene in Canada, and it's grown tremendously through the SailGP program. One thing that's happening out west, which has involved another of my guests that I had, Isabella Bertold, this team called Zigzag Sailing, which is sails the 69F foiling boat, which I think is 3 or 4 people on the crew.
3 or 4 people.
Yeah. Really cool looking class. Kind of like bridges the super like F-50s down to the the moths and wasps. So
and that 69F is a really cool platform. I've now seen them at 2 different events, actually 3. The way they have it set up is it is kind of like a charter fleet. So
okay,
it's definitely they're very neat. I got to go and check the boat out, and they look really fun. There was that one out yesterday ripping around in 12, 16 knots, and it was just back and forth.
Wow. And so the thing that's happening on the East Coast, as I was saying, Weekend Foil, Canadian Foiling Academy, basically what it is just a ton of wasps and other, I guess, also the wing foilers and the IQ foil as well, that they kind of have at the squad at the Royal Nova Scotia Yacht Squadron, and they're just open for people to try to learn to foil. And they had this big thing called Foiling Week, which had many sailors from across the country kind of involved. And I believe I know, in fact, that the boat, the Canada Ocean Racing boat, was there, right?
They were there. We were out all the same time, and look, foiling weeks are becoming really popular all over the world. So if you saw the one in Garda, who started 3 or 4 years ago, maybe even they had 1,000 people, and I think the great part about foiling week is just show up with a foil, whatever foil you got, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So that part of it is really neat, where you can kind of all come and rip around. It seems really fun. So Very cool initiative this year, and you're only going to see those grow over the next bit.
Right. It's yeah, it's a whole. I mean, we could probably talk for hours about foiling versus floaters, what we call, and the different pathways and stuff. And it's a different, very interesting pathway.
Yeah.
It's a super fun boat, right? But it's not. You're not going to go to the Olympics sailing wasps.
No, I mean, but what will stick? We don't. Who knows? So the wing foil is popular. The IQ foil
Oh,
seems
yeah,
to
that's
be
true.
pretty easy for a windsurfer to pick up. Or then you have kite foiling.
Yep.
So which classes will eventually stay? I'm not sure. I know the NACRA 17. I think after 2024. I think they might change that up. They do have the kite foils in there now, and the IQ
Yeah.
foil.
Couldn't have been wronger there. Like
Yeah,
Nacras, kite foils, and IQ foils.
I think four of the 10 are this year.
Luckily, there's people here to correct me. And I'm just salty because I haven't got to foil yet myself.
Oh,
Uh,
I remember when I turned. I don't know. I think I was 35 or it was my birthday or something. And like Wasp had been at RCYC for a while, and RCYC had a foiling week, and I don't know if they still do anymore, but I was super jazzed to do it. We went out. It was like a 25 knot westerly, and I
huh.
was like, okay, I'll go. And you get so exhausted that you're like, okay, I'm done here. You're like, I think Trevor Perrick was like, yeah, just sail it in. I'm like, I'm done. Like I'm too tired.
Did you get up?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay, good.
You would get up, no problem. You'd be buzzing around, reaching around,
Uh,
and
okay.
crashing like that. It'd be fine.
Okay, so that was 4, the foiling scene in Canada. Number 3 is the 49er and NACRA 17 World Championships in Hubbard's, Nova Scotia. What an incredible event.
Yeah, very cool. I mean, I don't know if we were training there at the time. I think I might have been off, but, oh, right. So my daughter was born. So they had the live stream. So I watched it at home the
Uh-huh.
whole time. I watched like almost every race. And the coverage, I don't know if was amazing.
Yeah.
And this Michael Smith from Halifax,
Yep.
Flying Fish,
Yep.
drones and going through everything. Very cool. So for someone to watch, and Lisa Ross was commentary,
Yep.
and she nailed it out of the park. And yeah, really, really cool event. And to see someone like Rugi there just win every race, that guy's going to be
Oh my
a
God.
legend.
Yeah.
And so,
So
it was-
definitely shout out to Mike Smith. I used to race Laser 2s against Mike in like the late 80s.
no kidding.
Great guy, really one of the funniest kids, really talented drone pilot. And yeah, I thought Lisa, I don't really know Lisa, but I thought she did a great job with the commentating. And it was just I went down for one day. I guess shout out to Ben Krypton because he was racing in the regatta. It's the first time I'm mentioning him on the podcast, but Ben and his crew, Raf Pedro, raced in the 49er Worlds. And then the kind of big 49er FX story of the year for Canada, it was certainly the Lewin Lafrance's versus Alain Mariah for trying to get to the Olympics. And I had Ali and Mariah on the show, and they were really great. I really enjoyed the podcast, and they're really cool. And then, but Georgia and Antonia also were Rolex Canadian Sailors of the Year. So we have to give them that. What can you comment on Georgia and Antonia's career this year in 2022?
Yeah, I mean they have, I think medaled at Europeans and all the different events they're doing, and even for Georgia to be involved with SailGP, just to be surrounded by all these other amazing athletes, is incredible, and to have two teams that are top 10 of worlds and World Cup events is just like it's amazing. So I've known both of them for a long time, and if you told me who I'd want to win and go to the limit, I'd say 50-50. So I think
Okay.
it's a good indicator of how dedicated those four sailors, and with George and Antonio being from Nova Scotia, like that's a cool connection. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's just really, really great to see them crush it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was fun when I had Ali and Mariah on that I wanted to talk about the rivalry or just, that story. Like
Yeah, of course you got it. Yeah. Good job.
anybody who's, anywhere near close to following the Olympic sailing team or sailing scene in Canada, like get your popcorn. This is the number one story for me anyway.
What did they say?
Basically, they said that they just felt like they're each making each other's teams better. And in the end, there's just going to be a better team going to the Olympics because they're close and both really, really fast on the world stage. I have all their finishes here from 2022. Georgia and Antonia, second at the Miami OCR, third at Kiel, 22nd at Europeans in 2022. I think in 21 they were top three. In 2021 they were third at Europeans.
Okay.
And then the Canadians, the Cork Canadians, was Ali Mariah won, and Georgia and Antonia were second by a point. And like, I think like if I remember correctly, like the first day those two boats were the only ones that made it through the day because it was honking so much.
Yeah.
I don't even think the guys stayed out, to be honest, but from what I remember. So they're second at that, 15 at North Americans, 14 at World. So incredible year, well deserving of the Sailors of the Year. And the men's class, they were all in the Silver Fleet.
Yeah.
The guys.
So hard. Hard, that class. Those guys.
Yeah.
Everybody's good,
Yeah.
And the side note, Justin Barnes back in the boat, so
yeah,
Justin for a while, and I was always curious if he would, and there he is.
So yeah, if that story is that Evan DePaul and Will Jones, right, who were the Olympians last time. Evan has retired.
Right.
And so Justin Barnes is sailing with Will Jones now. Is that
and
the
Justin
story?
dates Allie, so it's like perfect because now you can see your girlfriend when you go to regattas, which is hard to do. So I know those guys; they're going to be awesome, and that's actually going to be really fun now to watch in the 49ers.
Absolutely,
really cool.
It's so cool, and I think that going back to the Worlds. That Sam Bonnet and Ari Moffat looked like they were going to be this, really the solid team, and I think that that Will and Justin were ahead of them in Vilamora in Portugal last week.
Yeah.
So we got the heat is on, and the 49er men's class as well.
Get your popcorn out, right?
Yeah, man.
You're gonna need lots of popcorn.
I mean, that's going to be the thing is whether they can qualify the country.
Well, yeah, that I don't think that should be too big a problem with the country qualification system. But you don't want to go to the Olympics and be a tourist. You want to
go. Yeah. All right. So that was number 3, and just again, shout out to the Hubbard Sailing. Oh shoot! Now Hubbard's Community Sailing Center. Is that what it's called?
Oh man, I should know this.
It's a new club.
Yeah.
It's not really a sailing club. It's more like a venue. It was incredible. You go to big events like, at Cork, or I did a regatta in Dunleary in Ireland, these like huge kind of compounds with big marinas and stuff around. But that regatta in Hubbard's, it felt like you were just at a weekend regatta. Like it was all trees everywhere and stuff, and somehow they hosted just an incredible event.
It was funny seeing sailors just walk down that road that you drive along the South Shore.
I should say too, everyone, by the way, everyone strap in, this is going to be a long podcast. The one I put out a thing, I'm not impressed with my listeners or my Instagram followers, because I put out a post last week saying, if you have any suggestions for top stories, it's a sticker giveaway. All you have to do is come up with one idea, and I'll send you a sticker. And I didn't get any response.
No, you got
nothing.
skunked.
I got skunked on my sticker giveaway. So if anyone wants this Whitecap sticker, and they are awesome, there was one person actually from an earlier time, and it was Weekend Foil, and they said you should talk about the 49er Worlds, and that's our number
Yeah,
3 story. So
there it is.
I should say 49er and Acro 17, 49er and Acro 17. So now moving on to the number 2 story of the year. The number 2 sailing story of the year to me is Sarah Douglas.
Yeah.
And more specifically, her performance at the Princess Sophia Regatta in Palma. Like, she won by 30 points or something.
In all fact, could be the number 1 story. Winning Palma from Canadian would normally be the story of the century. So, amazing feat, and to do it in the style she did was just incredible.
Yeah. And I mean, sort of taking, like, first of all, I should say she was my second guest. Shout out. Thank you, Patrick, for hooking me up with her. She was so cool. I loved talking to her, and she also hung out for a long time after we were recording, just shooting the shit and, like, you know, talking about sailing and stuff that you can't talk about on the air. And
Yeah, right.
so she was great. And she's a pro, man, like, as a media person down the road, and she can do very well. But her results for the year are, so first of all, you know, did the Olympics, and then basically took 2021 off, right?
I think it was 6 months after she even got in the boat.
Right. So I think the first one back is Fort Lauderdale U.S. Open, fourth. And then Palma first,
Right,
by friggin' miles.
Yeah.
And I know that you have coached Sarah, and I know that you coached her very close to the beginning of that event. Tell me about the work you did with Sarah.
I remember we sat down and chatted the first, and so, you know, what do you want to do? You're back in the boat, you want to work on? She's like, downwind and reaches. I was like, well, awesome. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to think too much on the upwind. And
Yeah.
we got delivered like 3 or 4 days of just Fort Lauderdale ripping, you know, conditions with the big waves. And I think in one of the debriefs after, I was just like, you know, it was almost like I was out big wave surfing. I surf a lot, and you go out and surf with your friends, and the waves are big, and kind of nervous, and everyone's kind of, whoa, what do we? And then somebody catches a big one, and you drop in, you get all stoked, and then another person goes. So by the end of some of these runs, it was just like, you know, big rollers. The boom comes right down the center, and your parent wing goes so far forward, it's just flapping, and it was just a blast. So to see her rip it in the breeze and reach legs in Palma, it was like good. You know, like when you're so good as Sarah is, and you have like one thing you want to focus on until the next game, it's like, how great is that? You know,
yeah.
Really like the very pointy end of the sport. So she's there for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you? That's something that is like a challenge for anybody sailing. Well, Ilka, maybe more than a lot of boats, is getting some time sailing downwind, right? Because you end up way downwind, and now you have to hike back upwind. Right. So what did you? Were you towing her back upwind, or
no? It was the other thing. We would just sort of grind upwind and do little intervals and stuff like that. And I know Vaughn has done a lot of towing in Mexico. They've got a really good routine there. And, you sort of just work up as far as you can get. And then you go way down. And then you kind of like find to kind of cruise the angle to kind of come back into the marina. And then you're done, And,
Right.
As far as my filming and my bandwidth for, what's happening, it's pretty easy. Put a timer on, hike for a minute. Okay, yeah, steering looks good. Sheeting's good. You guys are fast. Okay, now we're way upwind. It's like, okay, let's turn and go, because all those waves that you're taking in the laser, like you're seeing, you pop on them downwind.
Right. I mean, it's the final. Well, it's not the final frontier, but it's the more you work on that downwind, the better, I think, in a laser.
Well, it used to go dead downwind in the laser. I remember 15 years ago, I read an article that interviewed Robert Scheid, and someone asked, "Well, what's really important in laser sailing?" He's like, "You got to be able to go downwind now. Like if you're gonna finish more downwind, they used to finish upwind, and a lot of they
Yeah.
don't do that anymore. And you have two reach legs, port and starboard, so you got to be good at that. And I think there's lots of gains to be fast in the breeze.
Yeah.
I mean, the
Absolutely.
boat, the laser is just such a beautiful platform because you can take all these different angles and you can be on one jibe, you can jibe on the other, and you can go out in 100 knots and go downwind, or you can, do it in five. So it's all
Right.
that same little dance, and it's super fun. And to see Sarah just like, we saw some of those finishes in Palma, she's just like,
Yeah.
out, like,
Yeah, that was one of the questions. I was like, did that really happen? Like, she was like, I don't know. You know, like it just was unbelievable how much she crushed that regatta, and that's like a huge event. Like,
It's,
I
it's
don't know.
arguably like the hardest sailing regatta in the world. You get everybody plus everybody, and then you put it Palma. And I've only been there a couple times, but it's a really hard place to sail.
Uh huh.
And it's that trophy that like a lot of all the best sailors want because of like the prestige around it. And
Hmm.
yeah, very neat.
Yeah, total amazing. Which would also like bring me to the rest of the Ilka scene. Um, you and I are both laser sailors. You're a coach. I don't know. Would you predominantly? I guess you're more of a pro sailor now, but you
I've
sail
bumped in the
lasers for more.
laser a few times. I mean, it always reminds me how like not flexible I am anymore. If there's like 12 knots, it's perfect. But anyone
Right.
here is a lot. But no, I love it. But bigger boats are definitely more attractive
Yeah.
now
Ben, my son calls laser man opties. Like,
that makes sense.
it's like it seems sort of in some ways irrelevant if you look at these boats that are like flying around everywhere, but it's you know, it's tactical. It's you don't lose a bunch for your tax, so you're not, the 49er guys are doing like six maneuvers upwind at
Yeah,
most,
yeah.
right? So it's a different game, and it's an interesting game, and I actually tried to get out of lasers from like I did the Masters Worlds in 2018 in Ireland. I worked really hard at it, and then I was kind of disappointed by the whole thing. And on me, just I don't know. I was just there like, why? I'm not loving this. Like, it's blow and stink. It's Ireland. All these guys. I loved the hanging out with everybody, but I just I don't know. I wasn't having a lot of fun. I think going to a world championships for anyone, when you do it for the first time, I know whatever masters, but like the first time you're with all these people, they have different, you know, they're from different countries. You're in a new location, and I feel like you kind of have to do it once before you can actually do well the second time. Does that
Absolutely,
sound sort
for
of
sure.
yeah? So I tried to get out. I started sailing catamarans and stuff, and they were fun. But there was no way that I could race. Like there was no. I like to race sailboats, and where I live, you have to sail a laser essentially. If you want to go out every weekend and race 20 people, that's what you got to race. But now I'm way into it again. Like I'm learning. The fitness is super important, and like, what better excuse is there to be fit than to be able to sail, fast and stuff. So I'm fully, and so moving on. There's a lot more Ilka. I'm putting them all on in part two. So Sarah is definitely our number one, our number two story, but there's all kinds of other Ilka stories. One, I just to shout out right away, Al Clark at the Masters Worlds. When I went, they had six Ilka 6 and Ilka 7 at the same time, but for whatever reason in Mexico they decided to separate the events out. So the first week was 7, the second week was 6s. Al Clark busts in there, comes 6th in the 7s, and then comes back and wins the
He
6s
did
the
both.
next week.
Jeez,
Yeah,
beast.
and just an incredible sailor with an incredible coach as well. But and shout out just to the Masters scene as well. Andy Roy came third in the sevens, and they those both in the Grandmaster class, which is 55 to 65, I think. So yeah, like, do you ever encounter any masters out there in your laser coaching world?
Actually, it's funny. So last week I was coaching two Melges teams, Zingara, and we teamed up with War Canoe with Michael Goldfarb team.
Uh
We
huh.
had lots of amazing, like Chris Rast and Dave Hughes on the
Oh
boat,
wow.
and all kinds of other great sailors. And one of the mornings, he goes, Chris, I hear you're a laser coach. I said, yeah. He's like, I own three lasers. I was like, amazing. So we chatted a ton, and it was really easy to relate because I can use examples about the laser and how it relates to the Melges, and it's all the same stuff. So the same stuff I'm telling the laser kids, I'm telling the Melges guys, and
Right.
we had a great week, and we're going to do more stuff. So yeah, you always pop up, and sometimes you always end up gravitating towards the other laser sailor
Yeah.
coaches.
Yeah. It's wild. There's basically a new coach for Ilka 7 sailors in Canada, Andrew Lewis, two-time Olympian from Trinidad and Tobago. I believe for the Olympic place in last year in for 2020, there was one spot left for North America, Central America, Caribbean,
Correct.
and Andrew got it.
You got it. In a medal race with 10 sailors, 4 Canadians, and him. And I watched
Right.
that medal race.
Oh, really?
I was there on the water, and they actually restarted it. So
Right.
when they started the first one, Vila was way out in front, and it was like, well, that's it, it's over. And then the big shift came, and the race committee they started it again. And I mean, I can still picture on the gate split, Andrew kind of went a little bit right. He caught a little shift, worked back, and it was, if there's somebody that you're going to hire to coach the lasers in Canada, it's going to be the guy that beat them all in the medal race to get the spot.
Exactly.
So
I mean, it's just a really
cool story. Couldn't be a better.
Yeah.
fit than
But wow, who knew? I didn't know that you were actually there. That's really, I mean, because I've heard it, I've read it, and everything like that. I was talking to Patrick about it too, and but then I've got a firsthand, and I know you're friends with Andrew as
It
well.
was hard because I knew them all,
Yeah.
and I wanted them all to win. And Andrew win, it was awesome. If we saw Rob Davis win, that would have been awesome it would have just been awesome. And so, as far as a story to tell for the ages, I mean that race was incredible. And like Andrew wasn't winning the spot until I think the third leg, maybe
Oh, okay.
second or third leg. And it kept it all together. It was composed, and it was light and shifty. And they had the race like right off U.S. Sailing Center with the westerly, which is like the hardest condition to predict what's going to happen. So it was really neat. It was really neat to watch that.
So also we were talking about the youth, women's youth sailor from Canada who's really strong, whose name I can't pronounce.
Annie Battle Submarinian. Annie Battle Submarinian.
She's our top. She was, I think, 18th at World Youths, which
Yeah,
was by far our top.
and the youth, I think, always right around the top 10 mark. Just put the gas pedal on a few years ago and has not let up. And I actually got to watch her last month in Sarasota and had her kind of slow start the regatta. And then the last race came out and just crushed the pin end start
Uh-huh.
and led the whole first beat to the mark. And it was like, to have like that instinct to like, okay, I need to go the 70 boat fleet and like I'm gonna beat them all here.
Uh-huh.
That's something that's like obviously as a coach really hard to coach, but
Right.
she's got it, and she's been able to train with all these girls. And I've been telling the radio girls I coach, it's a good time to be Canadian radial sailor, because look at the path here, and it's like, when they see Sarah, doing
Yeah.
other things with Sail GP and other, it's just like, what a fantastic system, So I think a lot of that comes down to what Sail Canada has done and put the pieces in place. So watching it all fall together is awesome. And for Annie to crush two worlds in one summer and kind of be on that next path, it's going to now those other younger 14, 15-year-old girls, go for that avenue. It's really neat.
Yeah, that's great. It's great. Um, so that's going to take us to the number one story,
Drum roll.
as as determined by me.
Yeah.
The number one story in Canadian sailing for 2022 is the Canadian Sail GP program.
Yay.
Do you remember when you found out?
I do. I was with Tom Ramshaw in Halifax last fall. He was doing a laser camp, and Ken Dool was there, and they were like, sounds like Sail Canada's getting, or Canada's getting a Sail GP team. I was like, really? And then we went to do the SSL training in Switzerland, and Tom and a few others were there, and we were sitting around having some drinks. We're like, who would you put on the boat tomorrow if you needed to? And we are kind of like, don't know. Well, Tom, this guy, like who's stronger sailor than him?
Right.
And then that was all we could really come up with.
Okay.
But to see them all sort of flow through with Georgia and Billy Gooderham, big shout out to him. I saw him in December, and he was on the dock, and he was on a flight to Ireland the next day to go do simulator training, and like his smile on his face was ear to ear, So very cool how they all put it together, and what an amazing success story. So hats off to Fred Pye for being a huge fan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was surprised when Switzerland, my wife is Swiss, so the fact that Switzerland got a boat, I was like, whoa, that's crazy. That's so cool. And I'm like, what? Canada has a boat? This is amazing. This is such a great story. And it's just, and all those guys, I mean, a lot of people that like, so Georgia, Billy, Tim Hornsby, Tom, these are all friends Chris.
Well, it's so hard to be a pro sailor, and it's so hard to be one from Canada, So the fact that they've opened up this avenue has actually given more opportunity for, guys, old 40-year-old sailors as me. So it's really cool to see, and I hope that more youth sailors and ones coming through there will now maybe gravitate to more of a professional avenue and know that it's not always just all the Olympics. There's a whole other side of there where you can, work and earn money and sail fast boats and learn a ton. Just get better and better and better every regatta you do with these people. And big shout out to Billy who was on Melges 24 that I work with now, and he's 7-8 years, maybe 10 years, I think they were talking about, and they were at the last regatta about how long they've been together. And I think Billy and maybe Richard Clark and a few others, those are the only ones that have ever made a career out of it. And so to get from there right up to the flight controller of a Sail GP, fastest platform in sailing right now, like, what a huge success story. So
amazing.
It'll open up more avenues for others.
So, and their record, then they came blasting out of the gates. I remember I was talking to somebody, and I interviewed Phil the week before Bermuda, and he was super nice, super great, super welcoming, and also like honest and open with all his thoughts. And but anyway, so they come out of the gate coming third. And I don't know. I think we all would have been happy with
not last, not last, guys. So not a tourist, not someone who's just there to watch other people compete. And they came out hot. I called it the romance phase. Those first few guys, like everything's working. You got Chris Draper on the boat, who's probably has more time on a wing than anybody. And so they kind of like had they had the recipe for success. And it's just really hard. So, as the events go on, everybody's getting better, and a lot of the people had new teams. So they're right in it, and, they were still winning races.
Yeah, and Phil, super aggressive at the starts, no fear.
It's that World Match Racing Tour from the early 2000s to late 2000s. That was, like, really hard. And, you look at the guys in that, like Taylor Canfield and him and Ian Williams, and, like, these guys are ruthless, So for him to have slipped through into the Sail GP world and been able to create success of it, it's hats off to Phil.
I mean, that's a good thing to talk about too. Is like that match racing pathway, like the fact that he was able to do that, like you say,
Yeah.
and him like putting it when we talked about it, that if you're doing a match racing program, you don't own a boat. You do the different events and you just jump in the boat that's there.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's like a cost-effective way to do really high-end racing. If you're a fleet racer and you want to learn another aspect of the sport and get your starts good, get your tactics and strategy down, it's an amazing thing to do, and it's something we should all kind of keep in our heads, that it's something that you can do.
For sure. And, you don't need to go down this Olympic pathway all the time. There's lots of other ones. So you can all end up in the same spot later, but that match racing tour is, I think, a really good opportunity. And I think it sort of goes through waves of people doing it or not. But if anyone has a shot to do a match racing event with some friends or whoever, like, do it. With a clinic beforehand as well, it's even better.
Right. I'm hoping to this summer. More about me.
Yeah, you do it. There's they do them in St. Thomas in U.S. Virgin Islands.
Oh yeah,
and you go to all these great places.
We want to do. So my brother steers a FAR 30 and a FAR 40 out in Vancouver, and they just came second at the whatever Vancouver area series. And so he and I used to do some match racing together back in the 80s and 90s. So yes, I'm trying to get Pete to come to Oak Cliff, where they do a lot of events there in June. Try to get invited to that.
Cool.
I know that Peter Wickwire does that.
Yeah.
That one. So huge tangent there on match racing.
A little bit,
Canada,
but, back to Sail Canada GP success.
Exactly.
Well, probably one of the few Kiwis that have actually not gone through the Olympic pathway to be one of the top in the sport. So, good on them. And, that match racing background is huge.
Yep. So they were third in Bermuda and then second in Chicago. At that point, that I had to do a special podcast with you.
All right. Yeah. Recap.
We did a recap, and I was thinking for a while that we should do one after every regatta.
No, that would get exhausting. I mean, there's a lot of these races. Right? When they win one, then we will.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You heard it here. Next, if Sail GP Canada wins an event, then there will be a recap, a water script and recap.
Yeah.
And then Plymouth, they are 6th. Copenhagen, 6th. Saint-Tropez, 9. And then Cadiz, they were 4th. But I think they won the last 2 races.
That's right. They did. They came out that second day and just won. They won the day. So if you look at the days that they won, they're probably a little bit higher than the actual overall.
Right. And so 7th in Dubai, and then I think they're overall. They're in 6th overall right now for the whole season. So yeah, that's the top story of 2022.
Pretty big.
We made it to the top.
Big story. Pretty big. 7 stories there. I mean, we were talking about before. The top 5 of them could have been the top story in past years.
Yeah. So there's going to be some. This will be the last time I'll be wearing anything other than my next sponsor's shirt.
Oh, you have sponsors.
I'm gonna have a sponsor. It's big mystery.
Ooh.
But for the next episode,
the
first one of 2023, I have a sponsor for the.
Now you're locked into doing this, right? You can't.
Yeah. The order is 12 episodes, so 1 a month.
Cool.
And so I mean, it's pretty friggin' cool. Thank you to everyone who was on the show, and everybody who wrote something nice on the Instagram or gave me some questions to ask the guests. And obviously, there wasn't a single guest that I had that wasn't super cool and super fun to talk to. And onward and upward, way more podcasts. It's got to I wish I could do more. If I could get 10 more sponsors, I could do more.
Well, you might run out of people. I think the way we're going with Sail Canada and everybody, there'll be lots of people you can talk to.
It's been an honor to follow this scene this year, and it's great to hang out with you, Chris, and talk about it. Third time on the podcast.
Right, I'm a regular now.
So remember, sail fast, have fun, make friends. I'll see you on the water.